After months of debate, we're starting to see how the future is taking shape. The 32nd legislature coming to a close yesterday. And joining us this morning to talk more about this is Governor Josh Green. Thank you for being here, Governor.
Thank you for having me.
I know it's been a months-long wait for you to kind of see how all of this is going to develop. But overall, how are you feeling this morning with everything closing yesterday?
Super pleased. I want to thank the legislature for working with us, for working hard. It can be a chaotic process, but a lot of the things that we committed ourselves to, leading with values and bringing resources to housing, homelessness, health care, affordability, they really worked hard on. Now, not everything got passed. We won't solve all these challenges in one session, but I can break it down for you however you'd like. There are hundreds of millions of dollars for housing. We have to have more housing for our people. A lot of money in the Rental Housing Trust Fund, for example. They overdid it in a good way, in a positive way on homelessness, so we can build kauhale for those who are chronically homeless and really struggling and suffering, and then taking in a lot of our resources. The healthcare changes, which we can talk about, were profound, and we will become the first state to be able to repay the loans of any healthcare provider that wants to come and work in Hawaii, really focused on our own local kids. Jamie always points out to me that those should be our first ones, and of course they should be. She's right. So these are big changes that will structurally help our state.
I know in your State of the State address, you asked the legislature for $1 billion to go towards housing.
Yes.
How close are we to that ask from the legislature, and are you okay with that amount?
I am. We're about halfway. And again, a lot of things happened kind of halfway. We got about half of the resources I wanted for housing. I'll break that down for you. It was $280 million for the Rental Housing Trust Fund, $100 million for the Dwelling Unit Revolving Fund. These are funds that help people build and kind of serve as a catalyst to get housing going. We also got a lot of resources for those who are rent unstable. In other words, they can't afford their rents. Right. That's another big thing. We got tax breaks for people who are very poor, but we didn't get as many tax breaks for those in the space that are called ALICE families. They're asset limited. In other words, working poor, living paycheck to paycheck. That will, I believe, come later this year or next session. But like I said, I didn't expect to get everything, and I shoot pretty high. We got more than we expected on healthcare and homelessness, and a little less than we had hoped for on housing and affordability.
And I know you touched a little bit on those tax credits, that tax relief, and you're hoping that'll be readdressed next year. Are there other things you're hoping that weren't addressed this year?
Yes.
Will maybe make the table next year?
Absolutely. So, like I said, we got $125 million in tax breaks for the people who are struggling the most, doubling the earned income tax credit, for example. So next year, people will see a lot of savings if they're kind of like under $40,000 per year, which they're really on the edge to survive in Hawaii. One thing that we didn't get solved yet is how we're going to deal with the climate impact fees. And originally we had proposed $50 fee just when you come in for people 15 years and older, simplest way, but challenging to do legally. They looked at it very carefully. It's complicated to pick and choose the places where we charge these fees. Sure. And so we'll work on that during this session. From a social standpoint, people are interested in the question of legalization of marijuana. I think that will probably be taken up next year. And then these tax breaks. I think that the tax break package has to be more robust going forward. One thing that happened was they put a lot of money aside for a rainy day. They saved $1 billion, the legislature, and on the one hand, that's very smart because we will always want to be ready for crises, whether it's a hurricane or a major problem with our healthcare system and so on. The downside is there are some people who have need right now, a lot of people. So I will govern a little bit differently. I will not be shy about bringing the legislature back if we see that we have needs or if we have problems that have to be solved. Sure. Let's let them take a deep breath. It was a lot of hard work, but having that $1 billion saved gives us a chance to assess the landscape and then come back in the fall or early next year, go right at it.
Healthcare made a lot of progress with some of the bills addressing that, and that's actually where a lot of Hawaii residents are going to be feeling the most impact.
Yes, 462,000 of our residents are on Medicaid, for example. One of our dear friends here at the station has a daughter that needs services, wonderful person. We're increasing reimbursements to Medicaid so that they equal Medicare. That way there won't be any disparities for people in need. We added $30 million in our state budget, and that brings in $43 million from the federal government. That plus the loan forgiveness to bring extra providers here is a big deal. The neighbor islands were big winners this year in the need to improve our hospitals. Hilo Hospital, $50 million to improve their facility so patients don't have to be transferred from the Big Island here to Oahu. Another $18 million for Kona Hospital. Samuel Mahelona on Kauai got $21.2 million, and so on. Because our neighbor island healthcare system usually has a bigger shortage and a bigger challenge to attract physicians. So those were really huge things for a lot of our people.
And I would say tourism, of course, we all know it's our #1 industry here in the state. And the legislature in the end couldn't quite agree on what they wanted to do with the Hawaii Tourism Authority.
Yes.
What's your take on that, where the direction of it's going, and they were allocated no money in the budget? So how could we maybe feel the impacts of that?
Well, in this particular case, in the 11th hour, and I want to give a lot of extra credit to my Lieutenant Governor, to Sylvia Luke, I asked her to go in and kind of broker a deal, and she did. So what we did do with her work with the legislature, where she's got a great relationship, we added $200 million into a space where our administration can allocate enough money to keep the HTA alive. Now, we have 2 contracts that are out there, one to market and one to manage tourism. We have to manage tourism much better, emphasize the cultural aspects of tourism. So that's $38 and $29 million respectively that have to be paid, because I believe we have to live to our commitments when we have a contract. So we'll have that money, but we're going to monitor it very closely, and we're going to check every single expenditure that the HTA makes. I think that will be another thing that's taken up next year. I think the future of HTA is in question. Our current director, his contract goes through September 1st, a very good person. I don't know if he's going to want to stay on, and we'll be addressing whether he should or shouldn't in the coming months. But HTA will be able to live up to its responsibilities because, of course, tourism is most of the revenue we bring. All of these things, though, do, I guess, demonstrate that we are in a change time, a time of transition. I'm trying to transition us to a more affordable place where we deal with housing and homelessness. We're trying to change how we look at tourism. I'm going to make sure we fortify the healthcare system for the next several decades. That's what you saw at the legislature this year. But there's still work to be done. I also want to thank the legislature for confirming most of my people. I think it ended up being 27 out of 29 people that went to a vote got confirmed. You know, there were a couple moments that were tough, but we do have a team in place now so I can execute on these resources.
Well, thank you, Governor, for joining us this morning. Some important information for all of you there on what the legislature accomplished this session. Well, thank you for being here, Governor.
Thanks for having me.